Welcome, gentle wanderer of the night, to Science of Sleep. Tonight we open the quiet blueprints hidden behind your forehead, the secret architecture of memory, and follow their corridors room by room. If this slow journey settles your pulse, feel free to subscribe and let the bell hum softly whenever a new story flickers to life. And while you stretch beneath the covers, tell me in the comments, where in the world are you listening from, and what time is it there right now? Now ease your shoulders toward the mattress. Breathe in for 5 counts and out for 8. And let each sentence widen the evening just enough for curiosity to breathe. Imagine your earliest clear memory. Perhaps sunlight glancing off a bicycle handle, perhaps the smell of rain sliding down summer dust. That single image seems simple, yet inside your brain it lives in a layered house more intricate than any cathedral. Its ground floor is the sensory foyer, raw flashes of light and scent captured by the occipital and olfactory rooms, then past along hallways lined with fast-firing neurons. Ascend one staircase and you reach a winding mezzanine named working memory, where thoughts pace like librarians arranging today's headlines on wooden carts. Above that, tucked beneath arching white matter trusses, stands the hippocampus, a curved gallery shaped like 2 interlocking seahorses. Here the blueprints of lasting memories are drawn in ink that requires the hush of night to dry. For decades, scientists could only guess at the blueprint's details, but a single patient opened the front door. In 1953, Henry Mallison, later known as HM, underwent surgery that removed most of his hippocampi to stop relentless seizures. The seizures calmed. His past remained intact. Yet new days slipped away almost as soon as they happened. Doctors finally understood. Without those seahorse galleries, incoming experiences could not gain architectural permits for long-term residence. A casual Tuesday conversation vanished like chalk and rain. The discovery was as startling as finding an entire city that forgets new buildings overnight. From HM's silence grew a map. It revealed that every evening, just as eyelids droop and alpha waves slow to theta ripples, the hippocampus rolls out drafts sketched during the day. One by one it relays them to the neocortex, the vast outer district where permanent archives reside. You can think of it as night shift construction. The hippocampus serves as on-site architect, while cortical crews pour neurological concrete, embedding experience into the skyline by dawn. Without this transfer, what happened on Tuesday never earns a postal code in long-term memory. Modern laboratories witness the handoff in near real time. In Montreal, a team placed volunteers inside an fMRI scanner fitted with an overhead projector. Subjects learned a grid of unfamiliar faces and names until neuronal hubs in the hippocampus glowed red-hot with effort. That night, electrodes tracked bursts called sleep spindles, brief fireworks of synchronized activity coursing along thalamic corridors. Each burst corresponded with faint replays of earlier face name pairings. The following morning, subjects who generated the densest spindle storms recalled the grid almost flawlessly. Imaging confirmed that memory traces had migrated from the hippocampus to cortical vaults. Daytime learning is the drawing table. Stage 2 spindles are the delivery trucks. Yet spindles tell only half the tale. Deeper in the night comes a low-frequency rhythm, the slow wave cascade. Picture ocean swells rolling beneath moonlight, except each swell is a billion neurons dipping in unison. During these slow waves, the cortex falls into brief silences a few hundred milliseconds long, like streetlights dimming so builders can weld unseen. It is during these milling pauses that molecular cement sets. Mice, deprived of slow waves, retain fragments of maze roots but lose the thread-linking turn to reward. People deprived of slow waves remember isolated facts, yet struggle with woven narratives. The architecture needs both precise outlines and a long hush that lets concrete cure dot to grasp scale. Imagine you're reading this sentence in daylight. Activity leaps through the hippocampus at roughly 200 spikes a second, marking syllables like metronome clicks. 12 hours later, in the muffled theater of stage 2 sleep, those clicks play back 10 times faster, condensing the day's rhythm into a flash. The compressed replay allows an entire afternoon of sensation to pass across the cortex in a handful of nocturnal seconds. Each replay is like a tiny time-lapse film crew, documenting scaffolding rising on a future memory tower. The orchestration extends beyond neurons, while replays hum. Glial cells open microscopic valves that let cerebrospinal fluid sweep through gray matter like a nocturnal tide. This glymphatic rinse clears metabolic debris protein fragments, ion buildup making space for tomorrow's blueprints. One research group at Rochester used fluorescent tracers in mice to reveal that slow waves drive these fluid surges. With each crest and trough, channels widen, waste drifts away, and the night watchmen polish yesterday's marble floors. Memory's house is not brick and stone, it remodels daily. When you learn a new phone number, synapses sprout, spines, proteins assemble, DNA transcription fires. These structural tweaks, called long-term potentiation, store shorthand sketches inside the hippocampus. But those sketches remain fragile until cortical masons copy them into thicker walls. That is why a fact crammed minutes before an exam may shatter under pressure. Its beams never reach the upstairs storeroom. Consider dreams. While the brain moves furniture between floors, consciousness roams halls painted in impossible colors. Many dream scenes borrow props from the day's sketches. The friend you lunch with appears as a ferry captain guiding you down neon rivers. It is no coincidence. Hippocampal replay seeds the imagery, and the cortex, half-lit, weaves a story. In this sense, dreams might be sculptures wrapped in dropcloths, glimpses of renovation before terraces officially open. All of this intricacy hums beneath a skull only 6 millimeters thick. We carry a palace of corridors tighter than a fist, yet wide enough to hold every season of our lives. Tomorrow, when you recall the taste of this very paragraph, it will happen because tonight, as delta waves glide across your cortex, tens of thousands of synapses will strengthen threads touched by these words. They will solder a memory beam, the width of a hair, stacking it atop endless rafters of other sentences. Other dawns. To help the night crews work, you need not memorize protocols. You need only clear space. Dim screens an hour before bed, so melatonin can rise like soft stage lighting. Let room air fall a notch cooler. Cooler blood tells the thalamus, the theater is ready. Breathe in for 5 counts. Hold. Drift out for 8. The vagus nerve will reply by slowing the heart, marking the blueprint's official submission. In the next segment we will walk deeper into the structure, tracing how emotional memories choose penthouse suites, while trivia sleeps in spare closets, and why a single scent can unlatch entire staircases you thought walled shut. For now, rest in the knowledge that your mind is already turning off hallway lights, rolling out scaffolding, and fashioning this moment into something enduring, beam by quiet beam. Just beyond the quiet galleries where tonight's sentences are finding their shelves, a smaller, better-lit chamber waits, its lamps wired straight to the amygdala. Every memory that arrives carrying a pulse of fear, delight, or grief is ushered here first, as if the doorman recognizes a VIP badge. Neurologists call this preferential routing, emotional tagging, and the brain enforces it with chemistry more persuasive than any red velvet rope. A burst of noradrenaline tells surrounding glial clerks that this delivery matters. They rally ribosomes, churn out plasticity proteins, and stamp the incoming package with a seal that reads "Keep Forever," even before the hippocampus files the final blueprint upstairs. Researchers at UC Irvine once traced the seal in real time. They asked volunteers to view mundane image S-lamps, mugs, chairs suddenly interrupted by a single vivid slide of an automobile crash. Saliva tests confirmed a spike of adrenaline within minutes. When participants returned the next day, they remembered the crash scene clearly but, more intriguingly, also recalled any ordinary objects that appeared seconds before it. The stress signal had spilled across neighboring synapses, upgrading casual snapshots to archival priority. In architectural terms, the amygdala rang a fire bell, and surrounding rooms poured resources into reinforcing nearby walls. Slow-wave sleep intensifies the renovation. The amygdala's nighttime dialogue with the hippocampus is like a late phone call from a restless tenant who insists on marble flooring while the rest of the building settles for pine. In rodents, electrodes show synchronized bursts trailing from the amygdala into CA1 fields whenever a new fear memory has been learned. These bursts ride the same spindle highways, but carry a louder horn, convincing cortical builders to use sturdier beams. By dawn, the blueprint of threat is not only copied into the cortex, but embossed, making it resistant to the gentle erosion of time. Joy and wonder can claim penthouse suites as well. A first kiss, the glare of a comet in winter sky, the way a grandparent's kitchen smelled of cardamom. Each event sparks dopamine and floods the same tagging circuit. Positive charge differs in neurochemistry, yet the architectural outcome is identical: high-priority storage and rapid consolidation. You can sense this hierarchy when trivia drains away, but a single childhood holiday lingers, bright as stained glass. Yet the system errs on the side of caution. The cortex has finite square footage. Not every excitement deserves permanent stone. This is where reconsolidation comes in, a nightly review meeting where the brain can renegotiate leases. Each time a memory is revisited, whether in a waking conversation or a drifting dream, the hippocampus unlocks its vault, making the script editable. Subsequent slow-wave cycles then decide whether to re-cement it, amend it, or quietly downgrade it to the attic. That is why if fear faced repeatedly in therapy can soften. The original marble becomes replaceable tiles, easier to swap for calmer decor. Scientists probed reconsolidation with a simple experiment. Participants memorized a brief story, then hours later were shown the opening line to reactivate the trace. Immediately afterward, researchers supplied misleading details, claiming certain events happened differently. A second night of sleep passed, and on day 3, the volunteers repeated the altered narrative as confidently as the original. Functional MRI revealed that the hippocampus had reopened the blueprint. The cortex adjusted floor plans, and slow-wave spikes resealed the edits. Memory proved more like wet clay than carved stone, reshaped in the hush between dreams. Scent has a master key to these chambers. Unlike sight and sound, smell travels from the olfactory bulb to the limbic system without a detour through logical gatekeepers. One laboratory placed roses under participants' pillows while they studied word pairs in a dim room scented with the same aroma. Overnight spindle density in the presence of the scent soared. Morning recall jumped by 30%, compared with a control group breathing neutral air. The fragrance had whispered directly to the amygdala, reminding it which blueprints deserved fresh ink. You can borrow the trick in modest fashion. Choose a single mild aroma, perhaps lavender, perhaps cedarant. Expose yourself to it briefly, while learning something new. Then again, as you drift towards sleep. The olfactory circuit, recognizing an old companion, will lean on the hippocampus to copy that lesson upstairs. The scent becomes a bookmark you can sniff open whenever knowledge needs reviewing. Emotionally charged memories also shape dream architecture. The more weight a blueprint carries, the more likely it appears as a column or staircase inside a dream. Therapists guiding patients through nightmare rehearsal turn this to advantage. They ask clients to visualize a different ending before bedwriting, a new exit sign on the blueprint. Over several nights, spindle-driven replays incorporate the change, and the nightmare shifts tone, sometimes dissolving altogether. The cortex, offered a gentler design, files it happily. Balance is crucial. Too many emotion-tagged deliveries, especially those soaked in anxiety, can overrun the construction crew. When cortical vaults fill with alarm-stamped memories, slow-wave sleep thins, glymphatic tides weaken, and the next day's learning arrives to a workforce already exhausted. Public health studies connect chronic stress to reduced spindle density and fragmented deep sleep. A vicious loop that worsens recall just when clear thinking is needed most. Reclaiming balance often begins with breath. A 5-second inhale through the nose inflates tiny baroreceptors in the chest, signaling the brainstem to slow heartbeat. An 8-second exhale tells the vagus nerve to ease electrical storm clouds in limbic circuits. Repeat the cycle a few times, and you lower the probability that stray adrenaline will tag an unimportant errand as monumental. Evening journaling works similarly. Writing fears onto paper externalizes them, persuading the amygdala they are archived elsewhere and need not occupy cortical penthouses. Of course, joyful excitement should thrive. Musicians learning a new piece just before sleep may find fingers dancing accurately the next morning, a sign that dopamine-tagged passages vaulted overnight. The same holds for language. Practice vocabulary with gentle enthusiasm. Pair it with a comforting scent, tilt the mattress by a paperback's width, and let the hippocampus whisper conjugations into long-term shelves, while delta waves polish the floors. Tomorrow, when you sip coffee and recall this soft mosaic of memories, pause to notice how the recollection arrives. Perhaps in one piece, perhaps stitched from glimpses. Each detail secured itself tonight beneath slow-rolling cerebral tides. Somewhere between the hush of delta and the sparkle of spindle. A blueprint you are reading now will earn its own quiet address in the glittering architecture of your mind. Before we drift onward to how scent and sound might open hidden hallways. In that structure, loosen your jaw, tuck shoulders deeper, and allow the faint hum of your room to signal the builders that the corridor is clear. They have work to do, copying the day onto tomorrow's skyline, one quiet beam at a time. A faint breeze slips through the fabric of your room, and with it, the barest trace of wood smoke. The scent might be real in neighbors, new-lit fire or only a memory of autumn evenings long vanished. Either way, your hippocampus perks up. The instant smoke molecules brush the olfactory bulb, checking dusty ledgers to see whether a matching blueprint hides upstairs. When the registry finds one, pulses of activity ripple outward, knitting the present wisp to old feelings of warmth and quiet. What began as a passing odor becomes a lantern switched on, guiding tonight's builders toward shelves where related memories drowse. Laboratories have traced this lantern's glow in minute detail. In Tübingen, researchers asked volunteers to learn 2 lists of foreign words while inhaling rosemary for one list and orange blossom for the other. Electrofactogram electrodes confirmed the molecules reached the limbic relay. Half the group later slept in neutral air. The rest received whispers of only the rosemary scent during stage 2 sleep. By dawn, recall for the rosemary list leaped nearly a third, while the orange list stayed average. Functional MRI showed hippocampal replay, firing in lockstep with spindle storms whenever the matching scent arrived. And tracer analysis revealed strengthened synapses in Broca's and Wernicke's language corridors. The fragrance had acted like a silent foreman, pointing masons to exactly the right wall. Sound cues can open hallways just as smoothly, provided they arrive as soft, unpatterned horizons. Broadband hum, a gentle sweep of frequencies, without melody, paralyzes the orienting reflex that would otherwise tug you into half-wakefulness. Engineers in Houston recorded the deep ventilation drone aboard the International Space Station, then piped that hum to earthbound sleepers. Spindle density climbed 8%. Slow-wave cascades stretched by nearly a minute per cycle, and next day, logic puzzle scores improved in proportion to the extra troughs. Months later, astronauts tried the same track in orbit, routing it through pillow speakers. Their dream journals described coherent, scene-based narratives, rather than the usual postcard flashes. And docking simulator metrics confirmed sharper reaction windows, perhaps proof that low Earth orbit can borrow from deep space if the soundtrack is right. Music with distinct rhythm, however, tells a different story. The thalamus is fond of counting beats. Even lullabies coax it into vigilance. At McGill, participants slept while headphones played a barely audible waltz. Microarousals spiked, and morning recall of a paired associate task lagged, despite subjective reports of decent rest. It seems the mine's construction crews kept stepping off ladders to salute every returning refrain. Better a featureless hush than a tune you love. Light carries its own keyring. Most bulbs flood the retina with wavelengths that arrests melatonin, but subtler gradients can shepherd memory rather than sabotage it. Kyoto researchers clad ceiling panels in interactive LEDs that faded from indigo to ember over 6 minutes, matching the spectral shift of true dusk. Subjects drifting under that artificial twilight produced richer spindle forests, and, curiously, dreamed autobiographical scenes with more place detail, street names, storefront colors, elevator chiming in perfect pitch. When panels brightened in pale peach just before dawn, recall of those dream narratives sharpened, as though the rising glow underlined the final paragraph of a nocturnal chapter. Within the neural blueprints, some rooms hold dry expose codes, passcodes, airport gates, yet others preserve textures and moods. These emotional microclimates depend on a hidden mezzanine, the entorhinal cortex. Acting as a border checkpoint, it parcels out spatial context. letting you remember not just a cafe's bitter espresso, but which window pane flared with sunrise. Optogenetic work at MIT reveals that stimulating entorhinal grid cells during sleep nudges dreams into vast, navigable landscapes. Mice run longer virtual mazes the following day, as though they rehearsed extra laps on invisible treadmills while the world outside lay silent. Genome scientists recently joined the quest. By tagging CFO's expression, they mapped which genes fired during olfactory-driven replay. The list lights up with proteins that pivot synapses toward long-term potentiation arc. BDNF, Homer 1A, suggesting that scent cues do more than point builders. They deliver building materials. Pharmacologists now test whether microdoses of these proteins, delivered intranasally before naps, can mimic the memory boost without added fragrance. Preliminary data hints at promise, though ethicists urge caution. Should laboratories dictate which memories stay or fade? Cultural rituals offer ancient case studies. In Guatemala, weavers set fresh sprigs of mint beside newly dyed yarn, then nap briefly under indigo tarps. They say the mint keeps patterns sharp in mind. Neuroanthropologists measured spindle density beneath the tarp's breathable cotton steeped in herbal oils and discovered values rivaling modern scent experiments. Meanwhile, in Japan, Shinto priests memorized chants beside bowls of hinoki chips, later breathing the same cedar dusk in shrine dormitories. The recitations rarely falter at dawn ceremonies. Across continents, humanity stumbled upon indexing long before electrodes confirmed the pathway. You can borrow these tricks tonight. Choose one gentle aroma lavender, perhaps, and let it hover while studying. Then again, as lids grow heavy, pair it with a broadband hum, almost subdoble, and set your lamp to glide from blue-gray to ember over 10 minutes. No alarms, no sudden crescendos. Give the hippocampus entorhinal grid and olfactory bulb a shared password. They will replay your lesson, sketch broader context, and cement connections, while the glymphatic tide washes debris away, leaving neural hallways freshly polished for morning traffic. Remember moderation. A room flooded with perfume, or a light show, bright as midday, forces the thalamus to police rather than guide. Subtle suggestion wins the contract. If you must adjust intensity, err on the side of half the lumens, half the decibels, half the scent signal, just strong enough for builders to find their blueprints, but soft enough that you, their landlord, continue sleeping undisturbed as you rest. Perhaps you notice the fan's steady breath, or the distant hush of passing cars. Imagine those sounds weaving with a lavender thread, tugging a gentle tug on hippocampal loops. Visualize unseen crews sliding ladders, tightening bolts, rolling fresh ink on memory walls. A corridor dream might open, shelves stretching beyond sight, catalog cards fluttering like moths, lanterns marking aisles where today's events line up for inspection. Walk slowly, trace book spines. Know that each title glowing in dreamlight could pack itself into long-term vaults before you wake. Next, we will visit stress architecture. How emergency alarms repaint blueprints in warning red, and how breathwork, or a single note of birdsong, can tip the balance back toward calm symmetry. For now, follow the faint fragrance, trust the broadband sea, and let delta waves rise and fall, carrying the architects on their silent barges through the midnight river of your mind. A sudden clang in the hallway, a dropped dish, a slammed door, and the amygdala flares like a red warning bulb. In less than a heartbeat, cortisol spills into blood. Heart beats twice in quick march, and the hippocampus hoists a bright construction flag that reads "Build walls fast." Evolution carved this reflex to keep ancestors alive. Stone-gray cliffs did not allow leisurely planning when a bison charged. But in bedrooms lit by silent screens, the reflex can misfire, overcommitting resources to memories that do not merit permanent apartments. A brief quarrel at dinner, a news headline glimpsed before bed. Even a late-night email can become tenants in armored rooms, reinforced at the expense of quieter stories seeking space. Neuroscientists at Stanford traced the footprint of such false alarms by measuring the ratio of cortisol to spindle density. Volunteers watched a suspense film clip just enough tension to nudge stress hormones, then tried to sleep. EEG revealed spindles thinning precisely in the minutes cortisol peaked, while amygdala hippocampal chatter roared like scaffolding. hammered at midnight. Next day, memory tests showed meticulous recall of the clip's grim details, but poor retention of neutral images viewed earlier. It was as if the brain's builders diverted crews from ordinary neighborhoods to fortify a single dark tower. Over time, repetitive diversions reshaped the skyline. Brains marinated in chronic stress display hippocampal shrinkage visible on MRI. Deep slow-wave cycles fracture, limiting the glymphatic wash that would normally clear metabolic rubble. Children raised amid constant alarms often carry patchwork. Memory maps into adulthood, some districts over-detailed, others blank. Like cities whose blueprints froze mid-construction. Night after night, the amygdala's fire bell sends misaligned orders, insisting the cortex invest marble where plywood would do. Resilience begins with recalibrating the builder's alerts. Breath is the oldest lever. In Munich, subjects practiced equal ratio breathing 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, while fMRI watched activity drop in the locus coeruleus, the brainstem's noradrenaline turbine. Cortical hubs shifted from tight beta loops to wide alpha drifts, and within 3 nights, spindle counts rebounded despite participants continuing their usual work stress. Equal breathing quieted the site manager, freeing crews to return to balanced room additions instead of panic bunkers. A second lever hides in posture. Lying on the left side, nudges the vagus nerve in a way that tilts heartbeat spacing toward parasympathetic calm. A study from Tel Aviv asked insomniacs to sleep on left or right sides for 1 week each. Left side nights yielded richer, slow waves, and 40% fewer midnight awakenings. Memory tests favored left tilt weeks by a slim but consistent margin. The explanation may be vascular. Left side rest promotes subtle drainage through the thoracic duct, easing cardiac load and whispering reassurance to the amygdala that no threats lurk. Light can be tempered rather than banished. Instead of a stark blackout, researchers at Melbourne University placed a single amber filament bulb behind an opaque screen, allowing less than 2 lux to brush closed lids. Melatonin remained high, yet the faint glow acted like a lighthouse, preventing sudden wakefulness when distant headlights swept walls. Subjects reported fewer spike awakenings and steadier dream narratives. Across a month, their cortisol morning peak softened by almost 10%, enough to shift perceived energy from jittery to alert. Soundscapes matter as well, but with nuance. Brown noise hushes startle circuits, yet true silence is not always. Golden, unpredictable creaks can feel louder in edges of emptiness. Acoustic engineers in Oslo design curved wall panels that transform sharp noises into softened echoes, like stones skipped across water rather than hurled. Bedrooms lined with such panels reduce midnight heart rate spikes in anxious sleepers. The builders, spared emergency sirens, resume ordinary pacing, laying memory bricks where they belong. Diet slides an invisible dial. Tryptophan-rich meals turkey, pumpkin seeds boost serotonin, later converted to melatonin. But heavy sugar surges insulin, which drags tryptophan into muscle, leaving the brain to toil without its calming substrate. An overnight study in Seoul compared identical calorie dinners, one heavy in refined sugar, the other balanced with protein. Sugar nights produced patchy slow wave cliffs and amygdala traces that refused to cool. Balanced nights let spindle glymphatic choreography flow. And participants woke recalling dream sequences with sharper sensory depth yet gentler emotional punch, as if the scenes kept color while turning down volume. Once a blueprint warps under chronic stress, the brain can still remodel. Therapists deploy imagery rescripting, in which patients revisit a trauma scene, but insert a protective figure, an older self perhaps, or a trusted friend, and allow the narrative to proceed in safety. EEG during subsequent sleep shows partial replay of the new storyline. Within a week, intrusive daytime flashbacks drop. MRI reveals amygdalodorsal prefrontal connectivity strengthening, suggesting top-down control, reasserts zoning authority over rogue builders. The simplest daily tool may be a notebook. Writing a quick worry list before bed externalizes alarms, marking them handled in ink. Brain scans indicate that the amygdala, relieved of guardianship, dials down signaling. Spindles bloom where cortisol once scorched, and the hippocampus conveyor resumes steady work, shipping balanced memories into long-term vaults. Imagine now the night inside. Your head as a city skyline wrapped in scaffolding. Some towers glow amber, the days, joyful moments needing only modest finishing. A few dark turrets stand walled in iron, products of older fears. Tonight, instead of sending fresh panic to those turrets, breathe slowly, lie gently on the left. Let a hush of brown noise and a hint of cedar guide workers toward ordinary neighborhoods. They will polish windows, paint balconies, install new staircases in quiet apartments where today's kinder episodes can settle. Allow the breeze of wood smoke, real or remembered, to drift on. Notice heartbeats lengthen. Picture cortisol valves turning half shut, like city hydrants, easing pressure. Somewhere beneath bone and skin, glial custodians roll carts through lit corridors, washing debris unhurried down glymphatic canals. In a few hours, dawn will slip through curtains, and you may wake carrying scenes both vivid and serene. A library with tall glass ceilings, a path through pines soft underfoot, the soft edges of a once sharp worry sanded smooth. There is power in deciding which blueprints earn marble halls and which deserve plaster. The decision is made not by forceful will, but by atmosphere, light breath, tilt, aroma, and the gentle vow to treat the mind's builders kindly. Give them calm instructions, and they will shape a city where memory apartments stand balanced and bright, ready to welcome tomorrow without the echo of alarms. A sudden clang in the hallway, a dropped dish, a slammed door, and the amygdala flares like a crimson beacon. Before the echo fades, cortisol has slipped into your bloodstream. The heart pounds twice in quick succession, and the hippocampus unfurls a bright orange construction flag that reads "Build reinforcements." Now, evolution forged this reflex to keep our ancestors alive. Sheer cliffs did not allow leisurely planning when a bison charged. Yet in bedrooms lit by silent screens, the alarm often misfires, commandeering resources for memories that do not merit fortified chambers. A curt midnight email, a scrolling headline, the faint hum of traffic, can all be mistaken for lurking danger if the limbic switchboard stays on edge. Night after night, the brain's builders race to erect battlements for scraps of worry, while quiet victories wait in line for raw materials. Stanford researchers mapped the blueprint of these false alarms by tracking the ratio of cortisol peaks to spindle density. Volunteers watched a suspense clip long enough to spike stress hormones, then tried to sleep. EEG revealed spindles thinning exactly when cortisol crested, while amygdala hippocampal chatter roared like jackhammers in the dark. Morning recall was razor sharp for the film's grim images. Yet neutral pictures viewed earlier had faded like chalk in rain. Masons had abandoned entire neighborhoods to finish one soot-black keep. Chronic rerouting reshapes the skyline. Brains, steeped in unrelenting worry, show hippocampal shrinkage on MRI. Glymphatic tides falter, leaving metabolic soot in silent corners. Children raised amid constant alarms carry patchwork memory maps into adulthood, districts hyper-detailed beside, blanks like unfinished lots. Pleasant events may receive plywood partitions, while anxieties bask behind marble. Recalibration begins with breath. Equal ratio breathing, 6 seconds in, 6 seconds out, quiets the locus coeruleus, the brainstem's noradrenaline turbine. Munich trials found spindle counts rebounded within 3 nights, even when workloads stayed heavy. Equal breath as a memo to on-site crews. Drills are over, ordinary duties resume. Posture helps too. Sleeping on the left activates the vagus branch running beside the heart, increasing parasympathetic sway. Tel Aviv volunteers alternated sides for a fortnight. Left side weeks yielded richer, slow waves, 40% fewer awakenings, and crisper recall of word pairs learned at dusk. Researchers suspect improved drainage through the thoracic duct eases cardiac strain, whispering to limbic guards that no threat lurks. Light can be tempered rather than banished. Melbourne scientists hid a single amber filament bulb behind parchment, letting less than 2 lux brush closed lids. Melatonin stayed high, but the faint glow served as lighthouse, softening abrupt arousals when distant headlights crossed curtains. Over a month, dawn cortisol peaks dropped 10%, shifting mornings from jittery to gently alert. Soundscapes require nuance. Brown noise blankets the auditory field, yet perfect silence can backfire. The tiniest creak becomes cannon fire. acoustic engineers in Oslo shaped wall baffles that transform sharp knocks into velvet ripples. Bedrooms lined with these panels showed fewer overnight heart rate spikes, steadier dream narratives, and higher next-day focus scores. Builders spared surprise sirens, took measured strides instead of sprinting down steel corridors. Diet slides, an invisible fader. Tryptophan-rich, suppers pumpkin seeds, turkey supply, serotonin that later alchemizes to melatonin. Sugar surges insulin, pulling tryptophan into muscle, starving the brain of its nighttime peace. Soul nutritionists served identical calories with differing macros. Sugar nights fractured slow waves and left amygdala circuits lit all evening. Balanced plates let spindle glymph choreography shine, and participants woke remembering dreams, vivid yet gentle. Even daytime stance influences nocturnal architecture. Slumped desks, compressed diaphragms, shortening exhalations that signal safety. Corporate trials found employees using sit-stand stations gained 5 extra minutes of deep sleep and 20% higher recall on design tasks. Straight spines by day translate into sturdy beams by night. The blueprint can still be remodeled after misfires. Therapists employ imagery rescripting. Patients revisit nightmares, insert a wiser self or trusted ally, and replay EEG on subsequent nights. Shows mixed alpha-theta bursts when the news story surfaces, gently overriding the cortical draft. Flashbacks fade, amygdalo-prefrontal pathways strengthen, and dark keeps lose their guardposts. A simple notebook remains potent. List 3 moments to keep, 3 to let drift away. Labeling tells the hippocampus which deliveries to prioritize. Students ranking study points, nightly retained top entries. 2 weeks later, with no extra review. Physical motion primes, selective pruning. Aerobic exercise boosts brain-derived neurotrophic factor B. DNF promoting precise remodeling rather than chaotic overgrowth. Evening runners in Stanford, data displayed tighter spindle clusters and crisper spine trimming without erasing freshly learned vocabulary. Omega-3 fatty acids add finesse. DHA woven into synaptic membranes smooths ionic currents, letting pruning shears cut clean. Populations with steady fish intake show sharper consolidation curves. Rodents, deprived of omega-3's south display ragged dendrites after sleep, as if gardeners used dull blades. Even laughter has measurable sway. A Zurich study had volunteers watch silent comedy before lights out. Their pruning index, the share of synapses trimmed without harming recall, rose 12% versus drama watchers, hinting that joy hones tools sharper than caution. But beyond pruning stands the fertilization bureau cells that rebuild where pruning cleared space. Astrocytes release lactate precisely when slow waves deepen, fueling energy-hungry dendrites. In Copenhagen, 2-photon imaging showed lactate surges coursing through hippocampal CA, 1 second after each delta crest. Mice blocked from lactate release, retained skeletal spines but failed to grow new buds, waking with maze skills dulled. Supplementing with pyruvate rescued growth, underscoring the balance. Cut, then feed. Temperature introduces another lever. Cold pulls, priming forearms dipped in cool water for 60 seconds triggers parasympathetic rebound. Colorado climbers, practicing the method, fell into slow waves 6 minutes sooner, and mental rotations of rope knots improved 50%. A gentle gel pack can mimic the trick, telling vascular sensors the day's fires have cooled. Climate couples with sound. A Japanese startup sells floor cushions emitting bamboo chimes only when room air drops below 21 Celsius. Ear learns to tie chime with coolness. Spindle onset attaches to that sensory duet. Early adopters reviewing language flashcards. Before sitting on cushions, remembered 90% of vocabulary. Next morning versus 65 for placebo pads. Chewing shapes architecture too. Dental researchers deprived mice of hard pellets. CA3 hippocampal layers thinned within weeks. Human participants crunching unsweetened gum 10 minutes pre-sleep showed steadier heart rate variability and 7% higher image set recall. Even slow mindful jaw work tells the brain nutrition is secure. Dialing back alarm circuits, reading lyrical prose in lieu of bullet lists, aligns pruning blades differently. Baloney volunteers read poetry or factual text of equal length, poetic. Nights generated longer REM bursts, and dream reports dense with metaphor. Functional MRI. Next day revealed heightened crosstalk between language and imagery hubs. Lyrical cadence appears to paint memory scaffolds in colors the pruning council opts to keep. Finally, rise gently. Harvard chronobiologists compared phone alarms to natural waking. Jolts shaved 15% off late-night learning retention. Setting a soft chime and pausing 60 seconds before news kept hippocampal theta undisturbed. Easing analytical transfer. Let these levers settle into tonight's blueprint. The calm window at twilight. Equal breaths, left side rest, amber lighthouse. Brown noise ocean, a cool sleeve of water, a line of verse. Dim the lamp, breathe 6 and 6, whisper silent thanks. Somewhere behind your closed lids, lanterns sway in hallways. Pruning shears, snip only what must go. Astrocytes pour fresh mortar, and masons carve new alcoves for today's brightest moments. When dawn unlocks city gates, streets will feel broad, sunlit, and ready for another day of footsteps in a mind newly spacious, newly kind. Yet even the widest, best-lit memory boulevards would be lifeless without traffic. Retrieval is the true pulse of the city. Long after blueprints are filed and balconies painted, a recollection must find its way back to consciousness, weaving through layers of cortex as a taxi threads rush-hour streets. Neuroscientists used to imagine recall as a simple pull-down screen open the archive. Lift a file, but modern imaging shows it is more like rippling lamplight sweeping outward from a single spark. That spark often ignites in the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex. A modest cul-de-sac that acts as dispatcher, sending a volley of beta rhythms toward parietal maps, temporal story vaults, and finally into the hippocampal roundabout, where neurons decide which route home feels most familiar. The spark can come from anywhere. A chord on the radio matching the key of a childhood lullaby. The citrus tang of soap that unlocks a long-forgotten hotel lobby. The soft click rhythm of a keyboard metronoming into the code you wrote years ago. Each cue flips one breaker, which flips another, and another. A domino filament glowing through the architectural grid until the whole neighborhood lights up, and you utter, "Oh, I remember." Boston labs recently traced the dominoes with pumped magnetometers, watching micro-Tesla fields bloom across cortex as volunteers tried to recall random word pairs. When a cue syllable sounded, deep gamma ripples burst inside auditory cortex first. But success depended on whether low-frequency theta waves from the hippocampus arrived within 200 milliseconds. Early arrival synchronized the network. Late arrival left islands dark. The discovery birthed a therapy prototype. Transcranial alternating current tuned to theta phase. Delivered exactly when a retrieval cue plays. In pilot Alzheimer trials, the stimulation bumped correct name recall from 38 to 55% for half an hour post-session, a fragile gain. But proof that timing is everything in a city built of rhythms. Outside clinics, ordinary people draft their own timing tricks. Students employ spaced repetition, revisiting flashcards at widening intervals that align with the forgetting curve's troughs, nudging memories just before they fade. Each retrieval restacks synaptic scaffolding, a renovation crew fortified by the twin sleep cycles that follow. Musicians run interleaved practice, switching pieces every 5 minutes to keep prefrontal dispatchers agile. The cross-training builds retrieval routes so redundant that a forgotten phrase mid-performance can be rerouted on the fly. Applause none the wiser. Even idle chatter functions as retrieval exercise. Linguists tracking households found that families recalling their day aloud after dinner strengthened children's episodic details 6 months later compared with recap-free homes. Conversation works because it randomizes cues. A sibling's story about losing a pen might yank your own memory of a red marker during math class. Training hippocampal drivers to pivot quickly between streets. Yet not all traffic helps. Rumination, the tight looping of the same thought race, is a taxi stuck circling a single block, burning fuel while the rest of the grid starves. EEG signatures of rumination show high frontomidline theta without parietal spread, meaning dispatchers signal, but no wider lights engage. Cognitive therapists coach pattern interruption, a stretch, a yawn, a quick glance at something blue. Anything to jar the loop and free taxis westward. Breath anchors again. A sharp inhale resets chemoreceptors. The exhale completes a vagal pulse that flushes norepinephrine. And gridlocks dissolve. Digital life, for its part, swarms the dispatcher with low-value pings, notifications, previews, recommendation reels, each spark half-hearted, none bright enough to trigger full recall, leaving neural intersections flashing yellow. Informational calories without vitamin retention. A research group in Madrid coined the term attentional anemia after correlating heavy scrolling with shallow retrieval basins in word-associative tests. Their remedy was radical simplicity. 30-minute empty buffer walks, no music. No podcasts, just footfall and ambient sound. After 2 weeks, participants regained 5% on delayed recall exams. And functional connectivity maps showed broader beta bridges. Technology may yet evolve into ally instead of adversary. Engineers at Caltech are building context cameras. Clips of ambient scene and sound, captured passively, encrypted, and replayed in microdoses right before sleep. The camera serves as a global cue, nudging the hippocampus to consolidate whichever life chapter those images represent. Early adopters felt their days stitched instead of sliced, as if small hours occupied by memory masons sewed the footage into narrative quilts. Privacy concerns loom, but the prototype reminds us that retrieval begins where encoding leaves breadcrumbs. Encoding itself can be hacked by emotion, but subtlety wins. A museum in Vienna offers visitors scented gloves, leather infused with faint bergamot near Renaissance portraits, cedar by medieval armor. Exit surveys show 30% higher artifact retention compared with unscented tours. Curators discovered that interactive screens added later reduced recall, unless volume muted. The audio-visual splash white-noised the delicate scent memory. Handshake. Nature handles encoding via multisensory symphonies. Stand beneath a flowering linden, honeyed air, soft buzz of insects, dappled shade, flickering eyes. Months later, one element resurrects the rest. Forest therapy guides leverage this by inviting hikers to cup ears, trace bark, sniff soil. The more modalities layered, the sturdier the retrieval scaffold. In a Swedish study, participants who named 3 sensations per viewpoint retained trail map landmarks. 40% better than silent walkers. Deep future visions. Imagine molecular retrieval tags. Biochemists are testing dendrimer nanosensors that fluoresce in response to calcium bursts, marking which dendrites fired during peak learning. In theory, a bedtime patch could read the signal, beam subtle pulses that coax slow-wave renters to move those memories into fortified cortex apartments. Ethical committees ponder. Where is the line between supporting recall and curating identity? For now, low-tech rituals suffice. As you drift tonight, pick one vivid cue from the day: a cinnamon latte swirl, the metallic clang of subway doors, the reflection of clouds in a puddle. Whisper it once on the exhale, pairing the syllables with the breath's falling note. Research out of Lausanne shows that self-spoken cues, timed to exhalation, double their chance of sparking hippocampal replay during the next spindle cluster. Breathing thus becomes both courier and key. Lie left, let brown noise spread like dusk over water. Visualize streetlights within your inner city, blinking on, not all at once, but in elegant waves. Builders finish stabilizing new balconies, gardeners sweep trimmed branches, and dispatch towers glow amber, ready for tomorrow's traffic. When morning comes, pause before silencing the alarm. Notice which image surfaces first. Maybe the latte swirl, maybe the subway clang. That is proof of memory routes freshly paved. Step into the day carrying the quiet confidence that every scene, every scent, every note has a reserved parking spot in the vast architecture within UF. Only you keep the grid clear, the lights timed, and the night cruise undisturbed. Retrieval is no longer hunting. It is coasting downhill on streets you helped lay, guided by lanterns you placed one calm evening at a time. Picture a vast observatory perched atop the city of memory you have built so carefully. Its dome rotates at a glacial pace, tracking constellations of thought that rise, shimmer, and sink beyond the horizon of awareness. Scientists call this dome the default mode network, the brain's idling circuit, active whenever you are not focused on a task. Far from wasted idleness, it serves as night shift dispatcher, reviewing yesterday's traffic logs and drafting tomorrow's itinerary. While you shampoo your hair or wait for the kettle to sing, the dome lines up fragments, proposing fresh connections you could never force in daylight. Researchers at Cambridge captured its handiwork with functional MRI during a simple experiment. Volunteers first mastered a puzzle box trick, then entered the scanner to rest. Bursts of synchronized alpha waves strobed across the default mode dome, and 15 minutes later they were handed a new, harder box. Participants whose domes glowed brightest solved the upgrade in half the time. The inference, idle circuitry, rehearsed variant strategies while the conscious mind drifted. Idle rehearsal blooms best in pockets of gentle monotony, folding laundry, strolling a familiar block, stirring soup clockwise. Digital life tries to colonize these lulls with quick hits of novelty, smothering the dome's slow plotlines under flashing thumbnails. A Tokyo study fitted commuters with eye-tracking glasses. Those who glanced at phones every station showed default mode dampening by up to 30%, and their evening creative association scores sagged. Passengers who let gaze unfocus past the window enjoyed dome surges that predicted stronger insight later. The lesson is simple. Gift yourself even tiny intervals of nothing, and the city's observatory will write the footpaths that tomorrow's ideas may follow. Novelty, paradoxically, needs those footpaths. A brain forever drenched in surprise loses its metric for importance. Dopamine signaling plateaus, leaving the hippocampus unsure which blueprints warrant marble columns. Neurologists refer to the threshold as the hedonic calibration point. Too little novelty in streets feels stale. Too much and street signs blur. The sweet spot resembles learning a new instrument. Every chord progression offers small delight. While building on predictable scaffolding, one way to tune the calibration point is micro-novelty dosing. Swap the hand you used to brush teeth, place an unfamiliar shell on your desk, or take a new staircase at the station. In Snow Polo, office workers assigned one micro-novelty each day showed larger midfrontal theta bursts during evening rest, prime fuel for default mode weaving. Memory tests a week later revealed they retained project details, better yet felt less mental fatigue. Their domes, nourished by measured novelty, kept the skyline vibrant without tearing roads for every passing whim. Sleep researchers in Zurich combined micro-novelty with scent indexing. Participants learned 2 lists of abstract paintings, one under plein air, one while a diffuser pulsed vetiver. Later that evening they performed a novelty task, walking home by a new route. Half the group opened a vial of faint vetiver when they lay down. The others inhaled plein air. Vetiver sleepers not only remembered their paired paintings more vividly, but also described dreams set in labyrinthine cityscapes, peppered with art galleries. The scent had lured the dome into stitching the day's novelty journey to visual memories, forging a broader boulevard between mental neighborhoods. Technologists now court the default mode dome with slow media platforms, 5-minute audio walks through imaginary forests, animated breathing visuals that fade after a single viewing, digital journals that lock entries until next day. Early adopters report better retention of book plots and lower late-night word salad anxiety. Critics worry about monetizing daydreams. Yet the underlying principle echoes centuries-old rituals: monks pacing cloisters, knitters counting loops, sailors mending nets, while minds drift beyond the rail. Retrieval, encoding, pruning, novelty all intersect in the final stage of memory architecture. Integration. Integration is the process by which disparate corridors, facts, faces, sensations merge into an avenue wide enough to hold meaning. Without integration, you possess shards. With it, you possess stories. The northwest corner of the prefrontal cortex, Broadband Area 10, appears to supervise this final merge. When Area 10 is inactivated experimentally, subjects can recite facts of an event yet fail to explain why it mattered. Reactivate it, and significance dawns like sunrise over marble rooftops. Integration relies heavily on dawn's first theta sweep. the moment heart and brain accelerate together. Italian chronobiologists placed heart rate sensors and IG caps on early risers. Those who opened curtains to natural light within 2 minutes of waking showed stronger coupling and better integration recall at lunchtime. Artificial light helped. Less lux value alone did not replicate the full spectral cocktail of sunrise. The suggestion, whenever possible, greet the horizon, or at least pale sky rather than a blue-lit handset, for apartment dwellers or polar night regions. Engineers offer dawn simulators that ramp from amber to rose over 30 minutes. While no LED can mimic every wavelength, integrated recall scores improved modestly with simulators versus abrupt lamps. Pairing the ramp with a brief ankle flex activating baroreceptors boosted effect, hinting that body motion primes brain sunrises. Last comes sharing. When you recount a memory aloud, you run the city's shuttle service, ferrying images from your skyline to another's. Speakers show synchronized temporal parietal activation with listeners when storytelling flows. Misaligned stories wobble, connections fade. In classrooms where students summarize lessons to peers, teachers observed 30% higher comprehension tests a week later versus silent note-taking. Storytelling is neural urban planning in real time, laying mirrored streets in two minds at once. Tonight, as the default mode dome begins its silent rotation, allow spaces wide enough for its beams. Dim screens sooner, exchange the newsfeed for a single quiet paragraph of prose. Leave a tiny pause between tasks. When you walk to the sink, notice the hum of the refrigerator, the echo of your footsteps. These small terraces of emptiness let the observatory map new thoroughfares. Then lie down, perhaps on your left side, perhaps with a hint of cedar in the air, and breathe the familiar 6 and 6. Behind shuttered lids, the city's orange flags will furl, cranes will pause. Gardeners will stroll, trimming and planting. Dispatch towers will test their lights, and the observatory will send white threads across the sky, stitching today's fragments into tomorrow's fabric. When morning's pale violet slips through curtains, pause, stretch, and see which street you first walk in. Memory proof, the night crews labored well. Integration is not a loud celebration. It is a gentle alignment of bricks until a passage feels seamless. And in that seamlessness lies the comfort that your inner metropolis keeps expanding, not in chaos, but in calm design, one quiet breath, one balanced scaffold, one slow orbit of thought at a time. Picture the city within you late at night, lit by countless lanterns that float like low constellations between ivory facades and arched bridges. Somewhere near the eastern quarter, an aqueduct murmurs its water, a silvery thread carrying nutrients from waking hours to the workshops of deep sleep. In attics tucked behind mansard roofs, craftspeople finish carving cornices on the newest halls of memory, while archivists roll tall ladders down endless aisles, sliding fresh volumes into place alongside chronicles written decades, even centuries, before you were born. Above them all, the observatory's domed roof continues its stately, nearly silent rotation, surveying not only today's recollections but also histories told around hearths long ago extinguished. If you strain your ears in that dreamlike hush, you can almost hear pages turning and scaffold boards creaking, evidence that the city is never truly still. Even when your limbs surrender to gravity, neural cartographers have begun mapping these nocturnal renovations with tools so sensitive they can detect the faint magnetic whir of ions shimmying along axons. At Stanford, researchers asked participants to relive meaningful cultural rituals, lighting a holiday candle, humming a lullaby in a native tongue, and then allowed them to sleep in magnetically shielded rooms. Sharp wave ripples in the hippocampus pinged out in triplets. Each burst followed precisely 1/10 of a second later by spindles in temporal cortex regions devoted to social knowledge. The timing formed a drumbeat, as if masons followed a master metronome to fuse personal memory and collective inheritance. Volunteers awoke with dream narratives that merged childhood kitchens, ancestral villages, and present-day apartments into single labyrinthine buildings. Proof that the brain stitches eras together under the cloak of darkness. Yet stitching needs fabric, and fabric arises from sense impressions layered through the day. Consider taste. In Naples, sleep scientists explored whether flavor can stamp cultural signatures onto memory. Volunteers sampled 2 tomato sauces, one seasoned with modern dried herbs. The other simmered in a copper pot following an 18th century recipe of anchovy, basil, and ash of burned vine cuttings. Only the heritage sauce triggered a surge of beta endorphins paired with slow delta waves during subsequent sleep. And only those sleepers recalled dreams of sprawling plazas, echoed by distant church bells. The finding suggests culinary memory uses molecules as courier pigeons, delivering encrypted recipes to default mode astronomers, who then landscape dreamscapes with piazzas, arcades, and wooden spice markets. Sound acts as another shuttle. Indian classical ragas played at dusk, tuned to the evening scale, Puriya Dhanashri. Prime the brain's theta rhythm to meld new information with centuries of melodic grammar. Electroencephalography from Bangalore shows that listeners generate cross-frequency coupling between low theta and high gamma harmonics, embedding textbook facts within arches of ragged sarangi lines. By morning, students remember chemistry equations more easily, not because music repeated formulas, but because those equations found room in a cultural hall pre-furnished by ancestral tunes. Even motion writes quiet annotations on cultural maps. Tai Chi practitioners in Singapore performed short forms beneath temple eaves before bed. Motion capture suits tracked joints through arcs refined over dynasties, while portable EEG recorded a cascade of sensory motor mu waves. Nighttime spindle density grew densest in parietal lobes dedicated to body schema, and participants later recalled dreams of slow rivers, turning beneath stone bridge images that matched calligraphed metaphors from Tang poetry. The body's memory of curved wrists and rooted heels had coaxed dormant phrases to the surface. Layered rituals prevent cognitive erosion when modern schedules scour away slower rhythms. In Reykjavik, engineers whose coding sprints often stretch past midnight adopted a 30-second ritual copied from their grandparents before bed. Pour boiling water over birch leaves, inhale 5 breaths of steam. No caffeine, no scent, and warmth. After 2 weeks, HRV trackers showed parasympathetic rise, and default mode connectivity strengthened. The leaves needed no pharmacology. Context alone recalled woodsmoke cabins and long winter twilights, lending familiarity to the silicon glow of laptop screens. But cultural threads can tangle. When rituals conflict, chant meets ringtone, candle meets fluorescent glare. The hippocampus may hesitate, unable to decide whether marble or drywall suits the new annex. German chronobiologists coined the term cultural jet lag for this push-pull, noting that immigrants who swapped lunch at noon for meals at 10 p.m. experienced phase delays in melatonin equal to crossing 2 time zones. Their dreams fractured into rapid, image-heavy bursts, devoid of narrative direction. And memory recall dipped until meal timing settled into a hybrid compromise. Heritage dishes, served around modern schedules, but eaten with traditional blessings. You may wonder whether technology can harmonize rather than disrupt. Some startups now craft slow notifications, haptic pulses that convey meaning only upon a calm exhale, avoiding limbic spikes. Early adopters report that such cues slip easily into the memory city, lighting street lamps one by one instead of detonating flashbulbs. Neural data suggests these pulses synchronize with cardiac receptors, embedding messages in the very ebb tide of blood, a channel older than speech. While engineers chase future solutions, historians dig older blueprints. They discovered monks in 11th century Greece practiced intentional night waking, called watch prayers, during which they copied scripture by oil lamp for just 20 minutes, then returned to bed. Modern volunteers replicated the pattern, and MRI scans showed a bonus consolidation window. The brief wakefulness pulled memories from first sleep cycles into active rehearsal, then shipped them back for final storage after the second sleepa, logistical relay warehouse, midnight. Perhaps your own memory city could benefit from a gentle interlude. Rise once at 3 a.m. Sip water under dim light. Think of one concept you hope to retain. Then slip back beneath covers so builders may weave that thread through the newly set lintels. Remember, every sensory key turns best in its native lock. If lavender was your childhood soap, use lavender. If cedar was your grandfather's wardrobe, let cedar ride the HVAC breeze. Pair aromas with their cultural echoes, a lullaby in the same dialect. A proverb, muttered under breath, and default mode. Astronomers will align star charts quicker than any space repetition app can. Flashcards. Gratitude, meanwhile, gilds the highest domes. Neuroscientists in Jerusalem asked sleepers to whisper not only thanks, but also the lineage of their gratitude. I thank my mother, who learned this spice mix from her mother, who stirred pots in Aleppo. This extra genealogical clause amplified ventromedial hippocampal harmony by 30%. It seems naming the root system waters deeper soil, convincing memory masons to carve arches strong enough for generations to stroll beneath. Take one more unhurried breath, and scan your body from toe to crown. Feel sheets grazing ankle, pulse dwelling in wrist, eyelids easing over corneas cooled by midnight air. When you label these sensations, you provide ground coordinates for the builders, so new towers rise plumb and true upon ancient bedrock. Outside, perhaps rain drums or sirens roam distant avenues, but inside the city, the last lanterns dim. Gardeners sheath pruning shears, masons hang chisels, archivists tie ribbon around final scrolls. The observatory's dome clicks into its rest notch. Star charts rolled tight in pigeonholes, quills drying in inkpots, scented faintly of pine, gum and iron gall. If tonight's extended ramble through hidden boulevards brought calm or wonder, subscribing is nothing more than telling the city clerk you plan to visit again. A soft chime next time the gates open. Before lamps go dark, scribble a note in the logbook. The latitude and hour when you listened. A breadcrumb that maps our shared atlas a little richer. Now close any lingering tabs of thought. Inhale to 6, exhale to 6. Let cedar linger, let mattress hug left hip, and imagine gravity thickening just enough to anchor limbs. Spires stand balanced, bridges swept, observatory shutters locked against dawn wind. May sunlit streets greet you with space for new amazements, and may each gentle breath tonight lay fresh cobblestones for stories that have yet to walk their path. Rest, Voyager. The architects sold a new, personal and ancestral watch over the city till daybreak.